You're listening to Zap Night, a video game review podcast. Join your hosts as we review video games from all systems and all genres. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Zap Night. I'm your host Danny, and today we have Brandon back again. How's it going, Brandon?
Hi. Going good. How's it going with you?
Doing good. We are on episode 84 for Metroid Dread. This game, man, I was so excited when they announced this game, and then I set it on the shelf to play later, and then we agreed to do it for the podcast, and I sat down and play it, and I'm like, yes. Yeah.
I kept saying the whole time when it came out, I just wanted the game, and I wanted to play it, and Kaylee actually bought it for me without me knowing. She bought it for me for a gift, and as soon as I got it, I just kept playing it. And I was like, yes, this is what I want.
I found myself, while I was in the middle of playing it, wanting to play more. I typically have a very specific stream schedule where I play three hours a night, 3 days a week, and that works out really well. But for this game, it was like I'd be sitting around on the off stream days, and I'm like, I just kind of want to play more. So, I mean, that says a lot for the game, right?
Yes. I mean, I wanted to start playing it again after I was just done. I wanted to start it over.
Right, yeah. Metroid Dread was developed by Nintendo. It was released on the Nintendo Switch in October of 2021, which was not that long ago. I'm going to go over the story like we usually do, but the story's kind of irrelevant to the game. I mean, unless you're following the story of all of the Metroid games as a whole, for me, it didn't really make a whole lot of sense, but I did what I could to try and piece something together. But a lot of the information that I'm about to talk about comes from the Wikipedia page, so forgive me if there's mistakes in here, because I don't know all of the details. But I'm going to go over it. The game, it takes place after the events of Metroid Fusion, where the X-Parasite has been eradicated on SR-388, and the Galactic Federation picks up an anonymous video feed of an X-Parasite that still survives on a planet called ZDR. The Federation deploys these robots called EMMI, or EMI. They're extraplanetary, multiform, mobile identifiers. But basically, yeah, I know. Basically, they go around and they find life forms or something to collect their DNA of some kind. But in any case, they quickly lose contact with those robots, and they send Samus in to check out the situation. Being that she is the only one immune to the X-Parasite's gene-mimicking effects. Once she makes it to ZDR, she encounters a Chozo warrior that quickly takes her out and immobilizes her. She miraculously survives, but she's lost all of her suit's abilities, like you do in a Metroid game. She's able to contact her ship's system, Adam, and he's able to navigate her through network points within the planet. So she finds a network point, she can talk to Adam from there, and he guides Samus back to the ship, which is on the surface. And she's no longer on the surface somehow. Samus encounters some of the Galactic Federation's ME robots, who are now hostile and hunting her specifically, and basically chasing her all over the place. She manages to find a Emmy's central unit and absorbs that energy to give her a temporary ability called the Omega Blaster. This Omega Blaster gives her the power to destroy Emmy robots and then absorb their abilities. So she goes around and she's hunting these Emmys who are hunting for her. Samus is able to collect more abilities by finding more of these robots and also power-ups along the way. But one of the Emmy robots stops and attacks her, but she's saved by a Chozo named Quiet Robe, who's a scientist that is able to stop the Emmy robots and is able to give Samus a lot of background information about the world. Basically, the stuff that she learns from Quiet Robe is that way back when, there were two tribes of Chozos, the Thora and the Mwakin. The Thora tribe is a scientific tribe, and the Mwakin are, it's more of a warrior tribe. The two tribes were originally on SR-388 during Metroid, the planet for Metroid Fusion, and they trapped all the Metroids there. The Thora tribe wanted to destroy the planet to eliminate all the Metroids, but the leader of the Mwakin tribe, the leader name being Raven Beak, wanted to utilize the Metroids as a bioweapon. Raven Beak killed all of the Thora tribe, only sparing Quiet Robe to be able to control the Metroids. And when Raven Beak returned back to ZDR, which is the planet that you're currently on, he finds that one of his tribe is infected with the X-Parasite. He manages to contain the X-Parasite outbreak by sacrificing all of his tribe, and that's who Samus fights at the very beginning of the game. So Samus arrives, Raven Beak is there and finds her, but spares her because he wants the Metroid DNA that is inside Samus. Apparently, and I don't know this because I haven't played Metroid Fusion, but apparently she's merged with Metroid DNA during the events of Metroid Fusion. Raven Beak reprogrammed all the Emmy robots to extract the DNA in order to revive the extinct the Metroid population, because in the events of Metroid Fusion, she also destroys the planet, killing and eradicating all the Metroids. Apparently. I don't know. Again, speculation from Wikipedia. So Samus then declares in her awesome Chozo voice that she will stop Raven Beak, and Quiet Robe is able to open up a pathway for her to be able to progress. However, as soon as he does this, Quiet Robe is then killed by some of Raven Beak's robot warriors that Samus then has to fight. Samus continues her hunt for Raven Beak and finds the containment area that the X-Parasite is residing in and releasing the X-Parasite to the outside world, effectively making all of the planet inhabitants X-Parasites now. And every living organism is now infected. There's this huge outbreak of it. The Quiet Robe guy, he gets infected with his corpse gets infected, and he reactivates the robot Emmy system, and they resume their hunt for Samus. So Samus makes her way back to the surface, and she runs into another Emmy robot, and is somehow able to drain its power. And later on, you find that she's reactivated her Metroid DNA, allowing her this ability to drain other life forms. Using Adam, she's able to find her way to the floating fortress where Raven Beak awaits her. She confronts Raven Beak and finds that he's been pretending to be Adam this whole time, and tells Samus that his DNA was what was used in helping her with her Chozo DNA mix that they did way back when she was first found by the Chozo people, technically making them related. So, like, Raven Beak calls Samus his daughter. So, in any case, she still fights Raven Beak, trying to stop him from creating these Metroids. Raven Beak actually pins her down, and just as she starts to fall lifeless, he's telling her that he doesn't even need her alive or her cooperation, that he's going to make an even more powerful Metroid using her own DNA. This news infuriates Samus, and she activates all of her Metroid DNA, essentially merging her suit as like this new Metroid suit, and she's able to start draining all of Raven Beak's powers and draining the energy from the floating fortress. Because the floating fortress was obviously floating, it then starts crashing back down to the planet, causing the planet to start falling apart. Ravenbeak manages to survive this fall and gets infected by an X parasite, turning him into this like huge monster. She uses her Metroid suit to fight the beast back and blow him up with her Ultra Metroid gun. And the planet begins to destabilize, and Samus has to retreat to her ship. She gets to her ship, but is unable to touch the power panel because if she does, her Metroid absorption ability would drain the ship's energy dry too. However, the X-Parasite of Quiet Robe shows up and merges with her because she has this ability to absorb X-Parasites as well. But the X-Parasite of Quiet Robe absorbs into Samus, neutralizing the Metroid effects, and she's able to fly off the planet just as it explodes. Supposedly exploding with all of the X-Parasites that are left in the galaxy. However, I'm sure they'll make some sort of remarkable comeback like they have this time. So that's about the gist of the story. Do you feel like I missed anything, Brandon?
No, not that I can see. I mean, it's pretty extensive for the short time frame for the game, but I think that's it.
Cool. So I gave the story a little bit of a lower score with a 7 out of 10. Like you said, it's an extensive story for what it is, and I kind of feel like a lot of the Metroid games have been that way, considering there's very little dialogue, and you know, it's so wrapped around the gameplay that it's amazing that there's any story at all. But what was there was decent to give you like the main focus of what why you're on this planet and why you're doing what you're doing. However, it is kind of pointless to people who haven't been following the story this whole time, like me. Like, all we've played for the podcast is Super Metroid and Metroid Prime, and this doesn't fall into either of those, really, so I have no idea where I'm at in the storyline, or, like, I understand the concept of the X-Parasites, but because I haven't played Fusion, I don't really understand what's going on there, or, you know, some of that, like, story plot that comes from Fusion. It makes me wish I would have played Fusion first.
Yeah. And where this is, because I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, I'm not, like, huge Metroid lore person, but I know, like, the Prime series is kind of, like, its own little thing, and this game is part of, like, the timeline, I think, with, like, Metroid, Metroid 2, Super Metroid, and
Fusion.
Fusion, and then it goes this one, so I think this is, like, kind of, like, this is pretty much kind of like the sequel.
So, like,
Super Metroid.
The 2D games have their story plot, and the 3D games have their story plot. Does that seem about right?
Yeah, because I know, like, there's, like, take Ridley, for example. Like, there's so many different versions of Ridley. Like, there's Ridley who's actually a pterodactyl. There's a robot Ridley, and I think it all takes place at, like, certain times. I'm not even 100% sure, and someone can probably correct us, but...
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
That's, like, my gist of it. But I knew a little bit more going in. Like, I haven't beaten Fusion, but I've played it. So I knew who the X-Parasites were and everything like that. And I had to look up because I forgot exactly how Samus got Metroid DNA, but I forgot that it's right at the beginning of Fusion. When she goes to the planet, she gets infected by the X-Parasites, and they have to create a vaccine for her. And they have to use, like, Metroid DNA to help make the vaccine, so it pretty much becomes a part of her when they do that.
It was funny because at one point in the game, I think Quiet Robe talks about it a little bit, but that she has the Thoa DNA, and which is the scientific tribe, and the Moakan DNA, and the Metroid DNA, and the X-Parasite DNA. Like, jeez! Yeah. And she's a human somehow still. I mean, only barely at this point.
I don't know how the Chozo stuff happened. I remember her, like, being raised by Chozo from, like, other games, because I think they talked about that in Metroid Prime.
Yeah.
I think. And, yeah, the X-Parasite stuff is just from her actually getting infected by when she visited the planet, and then the DNA for... Like, they use the Metroid DNA to help combat her being infected. So she just has all the stuff roaming around in her.
Boy, she I don't know. It seems like a lot of craziness going on for her biology.
Yeah. Now, for me, I gave the story a 9.5. Like, I really enjoyed it, and I thought they did some really cool things, especially with going to her background. Like, at the end there, like when they talked about like a Raven Beak being like her quotation marks dad and everything like that. I was like,
Right.
whoa, I wasn't expecting that. And this game, I think, did a good job, or at least more than the other games, where they spelled out a lot more story because of they added a lot more like voice acting, like with Adam talking and like all these cutscenes. There was a little bit more story actually presented to the viewer instead of like having to dig and read or like scan stuff in Metroid Prime.
Sure.
So, yeah, like, yeah, if you don't know anything about this, like, all this is probably just going way over your head, and you're like, just get me to the next scene. I just want to go find the next boss.
Right, and that's kind of where I was when I was playing. Like, I didn't even know who Adam was, but like the game gave me just enough information to be like, okay, this is the ship, and a lot of the story, they kind of covered a bit of the backstory at the opening sequence, where they kind of talk about the events of Metroid Fusion. I didn't take a lot of time to read through it. I did skim over it a little bit. But, it really does make me want to play it. Like now I really feel like we need to go back and play Metroid Fusion and see, exactly the events that happen there, since they correspond so evenly.
And that's a good little game because, just being on the Game Boy Advance and 2D, like it's still pretty fun. So I would, if you want to, I'll do it in the future with you.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So let's move on to graphics. I gave this one a 9 out of 10 as well.
The same I did.
It's the first thing I noticed as soon as I started to control Samus is that the animation is smooth as silk. Just like the way she runs is like, it's so satisfying, and I'm not really sure why I was expecting anything less. I think it's just the game is so similar to Super Metroid, and that was the last 2D game that I've played in the Metroid series. And this game, I was kind of expecting that same frame rate, and it was just super clean. And like she goes over, like if there's a ledge that's only one block high, she just like glides over it, and it's just so smooth.
Yeah, and I know that Nintendo gets a lot of flack because they always put out consoles that are less powerful than the PlayStation, Xbox, and everything like that. But they always do a really good job of making their games like look really, really good on their hardware. Like it's a beautiful looking game. They had like really good looking backgrounds, really good like effects. Like I love the use of the colors.
They had a lot of 2.5D events where like Samus shows up and it's almost like a 3D environment, and then the camera like changes and turns so that it's back to the 2D environment. I loved those transitions. It looked really cool.
Oh yeah, and like the Emmys, I thought that they looked really cool, and they're like those things are terrifying.
Yes.
Like for the first like 2 hours, like they're terrifying.
Yep.
But like the overall look, aesthetics, like the way they made it look, and like you said, as fluid as they made everything, like it was really good. 9 out of 10.
The boss fights were super dynamic. Well, some of them, not all of them. Some of them were pretty normal, but there were a couple boss fights that you had to like parry an attack, and then Samus would go into this like big cutscene where she's like still attacking, and like the boss is moving around the arena, and it's just really cool how they use that dynamic. I did notice that the Switch can't handle too much on the screen at one time. There was some frame rate dropping when there's a lot going on. Also, some serious frame rate dropping between like when Samus is going from one area to another, like on the elevator or the rail system or whatever the case was, it had a video that would play for like the loading screen, but that loading screen was like dropping frames like crazy and like just choppy and weird. So I wasn't too happy about that. Like, if you're gonna have like a transition scene, that's great, but let's not make it drop frames. It's just strange.
See, I don't remember frame drops. When you play and stream, do you play handheld or docked?
Docked.
Okay, yeah, because I don't really remember seeing frame drops. But then again, if it's happening during loading screens and stuff like that, I probably wasn't really noticing just because it's a loading screen.
Right, yeah, that's true.
You know, like I didn't really notice any like during gameplay like so much.
There were a few rooms towards the end that had a ton of X-Parasites like flying all over the place, and I would notice the frame rates drop a little bit from that. And again, nothing like super noticeable, but it was enough for me to be like, oh, come on, what's going on, you know? Like, this is, 2021, we shouldn't be fighting frame rate drops on a game system.
But, now, this can maybe segue into this, is like, even if it did, like, I didn't see any, like, adverse, like, gameplay effects from stuff like that.
Very true.
Either.
And that's kind of where I gave it the 9 out of 10. Like, it looked really good, and the gameplay, like, graphically, the gameplay was super smooth, but there were a few little spots that could have been polished a little bit more, but really, it's still a 9. Like, no complaints, really.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So let's talk about gameplay. I gave it a 9 out of 10. What did you give it?
9.5.
Okay.
I don't go with the 0.5. I thought it was like really, really awesome, for lack of a better word. Like, I had a little bit of lowered expectations going into this game because the people who did it did the Samus or Metroid 2 remake on the 3DS, and I did not enjoy that as much. Like, gameplay wise and just as a game in general, like, it's okay, but I was let down by it, so I didn't know what to expect going into this one, but it just looked so good that I had to play the game. And once I just started playing it, like after the first cutscene's over and I got to control Samus, I was like, right away, I was just like, oh yeah, this is good.
That's how I felt too. When you first get control of her and you start walking, it's like, oh yeah, this is going to be fun. And like the music too plays to that like atmosphere of it too. But I mean, that's another section, but still, like, it all is an experience, Yeah. The first Emmy fight, like you said before, it's terrifying. Like when you first drop into that, like the Emmy robot arena or like rooms, it's like, okay, this is different. And then you start walking around and they start chasing you. It's like, oh my gosh, run. And they did a really good job of utilizing the weaknesses that Samus has for that particular point of the game. Like, they tried you could tell that they tried really hard to plan, okay, Samus at this point in the game, when she gets here, is going to be limited in this way. How can we show that and make them struggle a little bit, because
that's my least favorite one, the one with all the water in it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, like and trying to run from that thing. Ugh.
A lot of hiding, a lot of waiting. The worst thing about the Emmy robots was the fact that you get insta-death. Like, as soon as they touch you, they might not even be looking towards you, but if you, like, run into them, then it's instant death.
Yeah, I did start getting more parries off the later in the game. It did, like, not all the time, but it, like, I could pull one off every now and then, like, oh, I got a counter, so I can run away.
I didn't know you could do that.
You didn't, they taught you right at the beginning of the game.
I had no idea. No idea.
The very first time you meet the Emmy, it's like there's a flash that you can counter, like a parry, but the window is so tight that it says it's pretty much instant death if you get caught. But there's a slight chance that you could parry, and it's like
Uh,
right before, like right before it like grabs you or something like that. There's a little flash, and you can do it, and then like it stuns them, and you can slide underneath their legs and run away.
wow. Yeah, I had no idea. I
Oh,
was just struggling, and like if they caught me, I was dead, and I just started over again, which was kind of nice because the game was very forgiving of your trial by death. Like literally, if you died, you just respawn back to the last room and then you try it again. So
yeah,
it's forgiving in that way.
yeah, because I think like if you're outside the Emmy zone, it goes back to your last save point. But once you enter an Emmy zone, it's like you're probably gonna get caught and die here. So we'll just spawn you right before you entered the Emmy zone.
Right, yep.
So I I will say that once like after the first couple hours though, once you realize like how the Emmy worked and everything, they were a lot less terrifying. They kind of just became more of a nuisance because you're just like, okay, I just got to figure out how to get around them to get to this spot. And if you get caught, you just go back and start again. So it's a lot less, oh, I'm scared to go in there. It's just like, I'm just going to go real fast and run by them. Like that.
Yeah, I agree.
So it wasn't bad, but those first couple hours with them though, yeah, it was terrifying. Like you'd see one show up and you'd like freak out. And you got your adrenaline pumping. You're like, where do I go? Where do I go?
And you're just running blindly at that point too. Like you have no idea where you're supposed to go, and then you show up at a door that you need, a special power up that you don't have yet. And then you got to backtrack and hope that you can avoid the Emmy before it gets you.
And then once you get to like the little boss room in there and you get the superpower, then you get like locked in to the tinier room because you have to like destroy the Emmy. And there's only like so many corridors where it makes sense for you to actually aim at them and fire. So you have to find that, try not to get caught, hopefully hit them, or start running again.
Yeah, I mean, all of that is a puzzle all in itself because when you first start firing at them, you have to like overheat its shield, and then the shield blows off, and then you can use the Omega cannon to like blow off its head. But it takes time to build up that overheating thing on his shield.
Yeah.
So if you don't have enough time, like it just cools off and then you got to start all over again from scratch. So it's like you got to find the perfect location to be able to do that. And every Emmy, and there's 6 of them in the game, and every one has a very specific spot that you're supposed to stand, and that you can exploit that system, but it takes some trial and error to find it.
Yeah. And I felt the game did a good job of the way that it ramps up difficulty, like throughout the whole thing. But I did still find like the boss battles to actually be pretty hard in this game on some of them. There was some that I struggled at first.
Yeah, me too. But like most of the Metroid games, it's trial and error. You just keep playing and keep retrying and learning the boss's movements and rhythms and patterns, and eventually taking it down.
Yeah, like when I got to the last boss, and that was something. The last boss, like I wasn't expecting it to be that long or hard for a little bit, and that was actually I had to look something up, and it was like the only thing I had to look up, and when it told me something, I was like, I didn't even think I could do this. It was one of those kind of things. Like I didn't think that this was possible. The way that the fight was going for me.
I had that in other areas where I had to look it up, and I'm like, oh, duh. And most of those were with the speed boost. Because the speed boost ability, they give you bare minimum information.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, wait, you can speed boost as a morph ball. And oh, wait, you can speed boost and stop the speed boost if you're going up a hill. Like, just like weird mechanics of the speed boost that makes it more difficult.
There was like 3 rooms I was stuck in because I didn't know how to get out, and I didn't know I was supposed to speed run into like a fan that was blowing.
Yeah.
I'm like, how do I get out of here? I can't like it's blowing all my missiles back and everything like that. And then I started speed running one time. I was like, oh, I can just run in here.
I was stuck in a room right after you get the I don't know the technical term, but it's the double jump.
Yeah.
And like right after you get the double jump, you go back up to this area that has some water, and you're supposed to double jump across the gap. But
Yeah.
when you first get the double jump, it says, "Oh, but by the way, in water you can't jump any higher than Samus's normal jump." So I took that to mean, well, don't even bother doing it in water because you can't double jump in water. Well, no, you can double jump in water. It's just you can't go higher, but you can go further. And so
Yeah.
I was just running around this area 3-4 times. I'm like, what am I supposed to do here? And then I looked it up and I'm like, oh, I just double jumped the gap.
Yeah. Yeah, the one thing I had to look up was in the third phase of the Raven Beak fight. He throws out the orange ball,
Yeah.
and like that's like the big power up thing. And I wasn't really sure how to get rid of it because like once that third phase happened, like the first couple times, like I just got smoked, like right away, just like destroyed. Because
Yep.
that second phase, like his machine gun bullets and stuff like that, I got destroyed.
Yeah,
by that.
same here. Then you
ruining
start
that.
learning. You start learning that rotation of going up and around them with the space jump. That one wasn't so bad because I was already using the ball bomb or whatever, the super bomb.
bomb?
Yeah, I was already using that on the little purple orbs. So like his first phase, I was doing that with the purple orbs. And then, like, when it came back around where he was doing the big yellow ball, I was able to just do the super bomb again, and that was gone instantly. So, like, I had no problems with it.
See, I wasn't using bombs, and I didn't think I could like charge the super bomb. I didn't think I'd have time because I figured the way that how fast he was moving that he would come and hit me, because I was taking care of the purple bombs with my missiles. Like it was like 3 or 4 missiles, and the bombs, like the purple thing, would go away. So he'd fire it, I'd fire a couple missiles, get the health, and then just go back to attacking him.
Yeah.
So that's what I was saying. I was like, oh, I'm like, you have time to do this? Like, I thought I didn't have time, and then like I did, I was like, oh, I guess I do have time to do this.
Right, yep. Yeah,
No,
that boss fight was pretty difficult. It took me I'd say maybe 2 hours to finally figure out all of his patterns to be able to beat him. And then after I beat him, I went back and collected all of the items. And then I went to fight him again, thinking maybe there'd be an extra something at the end after collecting everything. No, there's not.
No, there's not.
But I did collect all the items, and there's a couple speed boost puzzles that are really, really hard. So if you ever look to want to do 100% run on that, just be aware that some of them are really hard.
Yeah, I saw some of that, and I was like, I thought about doing it, but then I was like, no, I think I'm okay. I'm just gonna go ahead and like take my percentage and just end the game right now. Like, because I did think about trying to go and find everything, but I know that I didn't want to take like the extra 10 hours to do some of those things.
Yeah, speaking of, what was your gameplay time? Do you know it?
Off the top of my head, I don't know the exact time, but I want to say it was around 10 to 11 hours.
Okay.
I think.
I put in 25 hours, but that's like actual real time, which includes all of it's basically my Twitch time that I was streaming.
Yeah.
The game time had me at like 12 hours, or maybe it was 15 hours. So like
I think it does, like every time you die, it resets to like a save, and then it resets the time, I think, to that point.
Exactly. So, obviously I did put an extra like 10 hours into dying and trying again, which is all, again, it's all part of the experience with a Metroid game. You just keep trying until you figure it out. But
yeah, so you could probably add a couple hours to mine then from the time of trying. So we'll say like, we'll just go 15,
sure,
give or take. Which I think that probably tracks, because I think I had 50%. Was it 50 or 60% item discovery? I think. Like, I went and cleared out stuff that I knew I could find. I think a lot of the stuff I left was just doing a lot of the backtracking and getting some of the speed boost stuff.
Right. And there was a ton of speed boost stuff.
Yeah.
That was like their number one way of trying to hide something for later game. It was like, well, we'll
And
just hide it behind a speed boost. Like,
well, and they like the map for this one seemed kind of huge too, because I'd be all the way over and I'd think I don't want to go all the way back across this map to get to this tram, to go back to this biome, and then I have to get to the other one. Like I just kind of didn't want to do it at that time. But
what's
yeah.
cool is once you unlock all of the teleportals, you can use any teleportal to go wherever you want. So, like, once you unlock them all, you can just go wherever in any world or in any biome that you want to move to, and it just teleports you there.
Yeah, I did not know that. I just thought it still warped you just to the same color.
That's what I thought, too, until I got the orange one, and I'm like, wait, it wants me to pick where I want to go? And I'm like, oh, I can just go anywhere.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know that. Well, see, then that would make that easier.
Right, exactly.
See? We're still learning things.
Right. Yeah, no, this was a great game, and that's why I wanted to go back and collect everything. But that also made it more difficult. I think that's why I didn't give it the 10 out of 10, because some of the puzzles, the speed boost, if they'd have just explained the speed boost a little bit better in the tutorial of exactly what it could do, then I would have had no problems with the puzzles. But I had no idea. I had to look up. There's one speed boost puzzle that's really, really hard. And you have to start on one level and fire up the speed boost, then activate the speed spark or whatever it is. And then you then you walk down, and you have to fall off this cliff and then activate it against this uphill wall, where then you have to charge it back up again and then slide underneath the thing and then fall down again and then do the speed boost up the wall. Just the things you had to do. However, that said, if you watch, for example, if you wanted to go back and watch my Let's Play of it, you can see my thought process, and then you can see how I'm figuring it out as I go. And just watching a tutorial doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because it's just, here's how you do it. But no, if you're watching someone actually struggle through it, it's oh, that's how you do it.
Yeah. I think they probably did some of these things to cater to a lot of fans of the series, for the speedrunners and everything like that, because Metroid has a really big speedrunning community and is very popular. So I think probably some of the stuff is they do little nods, or here, let's give it to these people. For you're talking about doing the speed boost with the morph ball and everything like that.
Yeah.
And Super Metroid, that's one of the glitches people do, is they have a way where you can run, and the way that you run and jump and you hit down and go into a morph ball at a certain time, you can actually have Samus's sprinting speed in morph ball form. It's a trick that they do in speed running. So that's oh, well, now they just put it actually in the game. Here, you can move around like this now.
Yeah, that's smart. It's really smart.
So I think they did a really good job of a love letter to the series just in general, and trying to make sure everyone's happy. Here's stuff for new people, here's stuff for all the fans and speedrunners, and here's difficulty for people who want it. And if you don't want to do it, you don't need it to beat the game.
Well, and then once you beat the game, you unlock hard mode, which I'm not sure what all that does. I would assume that enemies are just more difficult, but I don't know, it's just kind of an extra little something that you could do if you needed to.
Oh, yeah. And I definitely plan on going back to play this game probably multiple times at some point. It's a game that I will keep, and I will probably just go back and visit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fun.
Well, and it's very similar to Super Metroid. If you've played Super Metroid and you love that game, this game is like that, but just bigger and more fleshed out than Super Metroid was. Not to degrade Super Metroid's legacy, but just kind of adds to it,
Yeah.
One other thing I wanted to bring up before we leave gameplay, There was a spot where after after the X parasite is taking over the planet, the world starts to cool down, the planet starts to cool down, and you have to backtrack to a previously explored area in this like frozen space. And it's like they completely retransformed that entire area to work with this like frozen story plot. And it was really, really smart. And they did it really well. And it almost seemed like a whole new biome, without it being a whole new biome.
Yeah.
Just, it was really cool.
When they take you to previously traveled areas, but they changed it up so it's got a new feeling to it, but it's the same area.
Exactly, yeah. It was very smart. Well, let's go ahead and move on to music. Again, I gave it a 9 out of 10.
I gave it an 8.
Okay. Number one, hands down, the coolest thing this game did was have Samus talk.
Yeah.
Like, it was just... It was such a simple moment, but it was just like, what? Like, she's talking, and like, it's cool, and it fit the mood, and it was awesome.
Now, I will say this too, since you said you haven't played much, this isn't the first time she's talked.
Yeah, I know that, I think she talks in Metroid Prime Hunters, is that right? Or...
she talks in Other M.
Oh, okay.
So there's that one. I know she talks in that, but yeah, like when you actually get to like hear her and stuff like that, and it is one of those things. It's like, oh, this is so cool because she doesn't do it much. So like when she does, it's like it's kind of like a bigger moment. It has a bigger effect.
It was really cool. It fit the mood. But otherwise, like music as a whole, just kind of typical traditional Metroid. Like, they remixed a couple of the themes to make them really neat, but nothing that's like nothing that makes this game any different than the rest of the Metroid series.
And I think that's why I gave it an 8, is because I thought it was good, but it didn't have anything that stood out to me like Super Metroid, where like I can get Super Metroid songs stuck in my head. Where this one's just like, it's good, it has slight remixes on stuff, but I'm not going to think about it like I do Super Metroid's music.
Sure. There were a few spots, like the boss fights. The music just could have been a little more epic for the boss fights. Like, it still fit the mood, but it wasn't quite as heart-racing as I feel like it could have been.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I mean, it's all right.
Yeah.
It fits.
Yeah, it's not bad by any means. It's just when you have, I guess kind of like Final Fantasy and stuff, when you have games that set like levels like pretty high, it's usually hard to get back up that high. So like if it's not up to that quality, it's like, yeah, it's still good, but it could have been better.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So overall, I gave my experience a 9 out of 10.
I gave it a 9.5.
Again, really, really fun. Would definitely play it again. I collected everything, so I'm not going to play on this file, but I probably would go back and play all over again. I don't know if I would really do the hard mode, because I thought the game was just fine as is, but I mean, it's nice to know that it's there for the, more hardcore Metroid fans. It really, more than anything, it makes me want to play more 2D Metroidvania style games.
Oh yeah.
Probably pick up Fusion eventually.
Yeah, Fusion's a good one. And just heck, actually could play just any kind of Metroidvania game too. Just
right.
Since we've been getting to this, like we've only scratched the Metroid itch. We haven't played like anything else like that.
I know, yeah, there's so many games that I want to explore. I literally have never played Castlevania game, so it's like I really feel like I need to, because I like this game so much. Like, supposedly they go hand in hand, but I don't know because I haven't experienced them both.
They kind of do, but from all the ones that I've played, I prefer the Metroid part of Metroidvania
Sure.
instead of like Castlevania's. Like it's just I can't get into them as much. They're okay, but I prefer Metroid.
Sure. Yeah.
But I was really surprised by this game because I had such high hopes because it looks so good, but being let down by the game that they did before, I still went in with like low expectations, and they blew my expectations away.
I think for me, I was expecting it to be. Sorry, no, let me change. I was hoping for a Metroid Prime game, but having played the 2D version of Metroid again, that's all I want to do. Like, the Metroid Prime concept can just go out the window. I really like the 2D style platform game.
I liked the 2D style too, and I was like kind of like when I played Metroid Prime, it took me a while to figure out that like, wow, they did a really good job of taking a 2D game and making it 3D, like the concept of the Metroidvania. And I'm actually excited for Metroid Prime 4 in the next couple of years when it comes out.
Sure,
I just
yeah.
gotta beat 3 before it comes out.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that we can do that. It can't be that hard.
Yeah, we can do it.
Cool.
I mean, it seems like every couple months there's plenty of Metroid games that we can just sprinkle in throughout the year.
Exactly. So my total was a 34 out of 50.
Mine was a 45.5.
So that gives us an 88.5 out of, or sorry, an 8.85 out of 10. So, almost a 9, very close to a 9. Well deserved though. It's a great game, and I definitely would go back and play it again. Again, it's up there with Super Metroid. Like, it's a really solid game if you're into this style of gameplay.
Yeah, I can't really think of someone who I wouldn't recommend playing this game to, unless they're just like, I hate Metroidvanias.
Sure, yeah. Yeah. So, Brandon, thanks again for hanging out and playing another game with me. The next game in the lineup is, well, we're going to start playing Final Fantasy XI, hopefully, if we can figure it out. The install is a little complicated, so we're getting there. But in the meantime, we're going to be playing, or reviewing, I should say, The Last of Us. So me and Lori are going to be playing The Last of Us within the next month, along with streaming Final Fantasy XI, so look out for that. But yeah, Brandon, thanks again, and to everyone else, we'll see you guys next time.
See ya.